Jason Gilbo here. With me is Chris Etherington, taking a look at this week's Dean and Deluca tournament, and hopefully going for a lot better week than last week after it was just a mess in and out of rounds.
Yeah, last week was just brutal. I mean, Thursday was just carnage all around. It was pretty tough scoring that day. And then Friday, a few guys came back to try to make the cut, but a lot of popular plays did miss the cut. Including my 4 guys for last week. I had Russell Henley missing the cut, and then I had Garcia up there at the leaderboard for Sunday, but then he decided to falter off. So it was basically your traditional up and down week for your contests for sure. Just glad it's over and on to this week.
And looking at this week, I mean, some decent names up there. We have Spieth back, John Rahm, who's always been a consistent high price option. And then we also have Sergio, who faltered off once again. But I like going back to Garcia this week. He's a guy who's eventually going to come around. I feel like after this Masters and kind of get on a roll here.
Yeah, Garcia is still consistent with his stats. I mean, he's 5th right now in greens or regulation, 23rd in birdie or better percentage right now. He's just not hitting it close enough for him to make the putts right now. But when you look at his recent form, I mean, his last 2 tournaments was a 30th and a 20th. So at 10,800, I think being 1,000 cheaper than Rahm, who I think will be the most popular play of the week, I think Garcia might be a nice little pivot off of Rahm for this week.
Yeah, as you said, 1,000 cheaper. Rahm's definitely going to come in highly owned. I mean, as he should. I think he's just kind of earned that title to come in and just be, plug him in. I don't care at this point.
Yeah, I'm between Rahm and Spieth. I think Spieth is going to be just too risky for me at this point. He missed his last 3 cuts. He changed his putter last week, trying to improve his putting, basically. But then when you look at his course history here, I mean, it was almost the same as last week. He won here last year. He came in 2nd in 2015. So, I mean, he's your pure tournament play if you want to go that route. But for me personally, he is a little too risky for me.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's better ways to spend money because there are some decent guys in the 9K range too. And Paul Casey's a guy who is going to probably get some love this week, and as he should. I mean, he's been solid. I definitely don't mind him. I mean, top 15 in strokes gained. So, I mean, I'll be and high-end options as well.
Yeah, I think for the top guys, for me, it'll be Rahm and Casey for this week. I really like Casey this week. He's hanging the greens very well. He's 13th in GIR, 25th in proximity. So all he needs to do is just get his putter going and hopefully make a few more birdies than what he's been doing lately. In his last 2 tournaments, he's finished 12th and 22nd. So I think with the Garcia above him, Rahm just a little bit more expensive than him, but I think Casey will be that other tournament option at the top for this week.
Jason Duffner is a guy I know you like sitting at 9K. Solid showing. I mean, top 15 this past week. He's been on a nice little stretch here. And this course kind of suits him well, just given the fact that he's been really solid with his irons.
Yeah, again, he's the last month and a half for Duffner has been very consistent with hanging greens. If you look at his course history, I mean, he has 2 second-place finishes at this tournament. He finished 6th last year. Only 1 missed cut going back in 2011. So with that and with his recent play recently, with 2 top 15s in his last 6 weeks, I mean, at 9,000, I think starting him for your cash game option is the way to go for this week.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I mean, we kind of get to this mid range here where like you have Duffner, Mickelson, Finau, and then like Hadwin. Like I like Finau. I always like Finau. And he's been playing well, and I feel like that price tag is just always right on point.
Yeah, Fino is a really solid play, I think, as well. He's played here twice before, finishing 19th and 34th. Um, when you look at his recent performance, I mean, same with Duffner, he finished 13th last week. He did have the one miss cut the week before, but again, that was at the Players. That was when a lot of popular players missed the cut, so I'm just not going to regard that. And then he finished third at the Flero. So I think for Fino being at 87 is a fine price for him.
And I like that Mickelson's right there as well because Mickelson always just takes away ownership from whatever range he's in just because he has that name factor.
Yeah, he has that floor where you can basically bet that he's going to get around 15 to 17% in ownership. And I think it's going to be at least 20, being that it's at 8,800. People will probably pick Rob, and then they'll probably go to Phil just because they know Phil. But for me, I'm just going to have to fade him for this week. I like a lot of guys underneath him.
Yeah, and Adam Hadwin, not a Canadian guy that you're just picking all the time. He's actually been very consistent this year.
Yeah, it seems like some people might consider I'm just picking him just because of bias. He's Canadian, I'm Canadian. Yeah, it's not the case. I mean, he's made his last three cuts. He finished 30th at the Players when it was a really tough week to play at that course, especially with the renovations and whatnot. I mean, when you look at Hadwin's stats, I mean, he's basically just above average for the stats I'm looking at. He's 33rd for birdie or better, 57th for GIR, and 73rd for proximity. So, I mean, it's hard for me to repeat myself almost every week, but when the guy is that consistent, I'm just going to go back to him. And at 8,400, I think is a steal for this week.
I'm with you, and I think given the fact that your core is 9K and under, kind of suggests where you're probably heading as far as kind of the lineup construction goes.
Yeah, after the Sally's was released earlier today, when I saw the prices, I saw the four guys that I like. It's very clear that I'm basically fading the top guys. I'm just going to go balance. So there's maybe a couple guys that I like below 7, but that's pretty much it for me. I think staying around the $8,000 mark is the way to go.
Yeah, and Chris Kirk, 8,200 is the guy you talked about in your core. You have him, definition as a cash game guy this week, and that's kind of really what he's been all year.
Yeah, for the three stats that I'm looking at, he's definitely one of the best for this week. He's 28th in birdie or better, 39th in greens or regulation, 30th in proximity. When you look at his recent form, I mean, in his last 3 weeks, he's made 2 cuts, which includes a 12th place finish at the Players. And then when you look at his course history, I mean, he's won here in 2015, and he hasn't missed a cut in the last 6 years. So being at 8,200, if you start him with like the other two guys, Hadwin and Duffner, I think those 3 guys right there is your cash lineup basically, and just fill in the others.
Then we get into this intriguing 7K range. You got Sung Kang, who, we laugh because his price has not moved at all in over the last 3 tournaments, still at 7,400. Playing well. I mean, he's made the cut once in 2 tries here. It's just kind of hard to get away from just because of the price. And I think cash games is a good play because he's still going to draw a lot of ownership. But GPPs, you might be able to look elsewhere.
Yeah, he's just becoming a little too popular for my liking for being at 7,400. Yeah, he's made his last 4 cuts. But the fact that he's missed a cut here last year, I'm at 7,400. I think I'm just going to stay away because I like a few people around him a lot more than Kane is. So I think I'm just going to fade him for the week.
Yeah, Grill is a guy that you're taking a look at, a couple $100 more. He's another one who's been really consistent.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at his stats, yeah, he's definitely basically average, maybe just above average. He's 48th in birdie better. He's 52nd in GIR, 56th in proximity. So he's definitely up there with all of them. I mean, when you look at his recent form, he finished 11th at his last tournament, which again was the Players. So with that being said, and he made the cut here last year, I think he's just another fine option around the 8,000 mark for this week.
Kind of like Pat Perez. I mean, 7,600. I mean, top 25 in 4 out of his last 5 tournaments. So, I mean, he's been solid. 7,600, decent price for him. I mean, he finished 5th here in 2015. Decent ball striker. I mean, I don't mind Perez as kind of that pivot away from like Kang.
Yeah, he's. I mean, he's probably still going to be a little popular around these guys. When you look at his stats, he's 15th in birdie better percentage right now. He's actually pretty good around the greens, scrambling wise. He's 13th for that. So I think when people are looking at that and they're seeing people around him, I think they're just gonna almost, I would say, auto click Perez at 76, but I think him and Kane are definitely going to be the most popular plays in the mid sevens.
I mean, if that's the case, I mean, Kyle Stanley's not a bad option right there. He'll definitely draw lower ownership. You and I trying to figure out Lucas Glover this week, 7,500, what to possibly do with him. I mean, he'd probably be the deeper GPP play away from those.
Yeah, I think Stanley might be a good cash option. When you look at his stats, I mean, he's a really good ball striker. He's third in GIR right now. He's 5th in proximity. So, I mean, and Glover's just below him. I mean, those two guys with Perez and Kane being around those two, I think Glover and Stanley are fine place for this week. Like I said, Stanley for cash and Glover maybe for tournaments because he's not going to be that popular.
Nick Taylor is a guy that you're taking a look at, another cheap guy. I mean, there's a lot of nice values on this weekend.
Yeah, the couple guys down here I really like. Nick Taylor's one of them. His stats is okay, but when you look at his recent form, he's made his last 4 cuts. 2 of them were top 10s. The other 2, he finished 22nd in both. I mean, you look at that, I think you look at his history here, he's made his last 2 cuts here. So at 7,300, I think, again, is a steal for him. And the other guy I like is at the same price as Charlie Hoffman. I think that's a little mispriced. He should be at least 1,000 more, if that. Again, he's going to probably be a nice cash option because he hasn't missed a cut in the last 5 years here. So, I mean, Hoffman and Taylor are going to be in a fine place for this week as well.
McGirt, the usual GPP play, cheap again. He's always worth firing up. I mean, he has the upside. The problem with him is, around the greens, he can be a little bit tricky, but he is accurate off the tee, which I like. So, I mean, if he can get going on the greens, and he might not be a bad play this week.
Yeah, you just don't know what to get for McGirt. I mean, he can get you a missed cut, or he can finish inside the top 5. I mean, at 7,100, you're just basically just gambling on the guy, hopefully to make the cut, and then if he makes a putt here and there, maybe he'll actually contend and finish at the top of the leaderboard. But yeah, he's been okay for the year so far. Most of his stats are average, maybe just below average for the field. But overall, if he makes the cut, that's all you want for him.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, got a couple make cuts here at the tournament, so I mean that's in his favor.
Yeah, exactly, and that's all you want.
Yeah. Anyone else lower? Below 7K, and we touched on a lot of this mid range.
Yeah, the one guy that really stood out, and I think is going to be the elephant in the room, I think, is the Bill Haas. He's at 6,900 for some reason. I mean, his stats are still good. Yeah, he missed some cuts recently, but I mean, we're used to paying Haas around $85,000 to $9,000 range. For him to be below like JJ Spawn or Cody Gribble, players like that, there's really no reason to. I think Haas is a steal at 6,900. It could be similar for what happened last week with Billy Horschel being that cheap, and then he ended up winning the tournament. So I'm not saying that's going to happen with Haas, but it looks very similar this week.
Yeah, definitely at a price where worth firing up a couple shots at him at the least.
Right, exactly.
So, dark horse for you to win this week?
Dark horse, I think. You know what? I think I will go to Chris Kirk. He hasn't won in a while. And I think he's finally getting into form. So I think at 8,200, Chris Kirk, I think is a fine dark horse.
I like the call. So you heard it here first.
Yeah.
So if you want to check out Chris's core, you can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com. His article is up on the site. And good luck this week.